Have you ever noticed that some people simply don't post photos? It's not forgetfulness, it's not lack of time. It's a conscious choice, or at least it seems to be. The clean feed, the old profile picture, sometimes not even that. And when someone asks, why don't you post? The answer comes quickly. Oh, I don't like exposure. But is that really all there is to it? Or is there something much deeper going on behind this refusal? If you're one of these people, you've probably heard it all. You're too private. Do you think you're better than everyone else? Or are you afraid of what people will think? And maybe you yourself don't know how to answer properly. Because, look, sometimes you do want to post. You even take the photo, select it, write the caption. And when it's time to hit publish, you freeze. Delete everything. And you're left with that strange feeling as if you'd run away from something. We live in a world where existing seems to require proof. And that proof, for many, comes in the form of photos, stories, updates. It's as if your life only counts if others can see it, like it, comment on it. But there are people who resist this, who stay out, who refuse to play this game. And the fascinating thing is that this refusal isn't as simple as it appears. In this video, we're going to understand what Freud would say about this behavior. We're going to dive deep into what really happens inside someone who chooses, or can't bring themselves, to show up on social media. And you can be sure there's nothing simple about it. Think about this for a moment. You grab your phone, you have a good photo. Maybe you're at a party, on a trip, or just having a good day. You look at the photo and think, this is nice. You even start writing something. But then that feeling comes, an inexplicable discomfort, a voice that says, no, better not, and you give up. The truth is that social media has become a stage where we all, to some extent, perform a version of ourselves. And for some people, getting on that stage is terrifying. Not because they're shy, not necessarily because they're introverted, but because something deeper is activated when they think about exposing themselves to others' gaze. Freud would say that every behavior has a reason. Nothing we do is random. And when you refuse to post a photo, your unconscious is telling you something. It's protecting you from something. But from what exactly? That's what we're going to uncover here. Before we continue, I need to make something clear. This video is not going to judge anyone. Not posting photos isn't better or worse than posting. It's not a sign of spiritual evolution or psychological problems. It's simply a behavior. And like all behaviors, it has unconscious roots worth exploring. I'm also not here to tell you that you need to change. Maybe you're perfectly happy not posting. Maybe this is a genuine choice that makes complete sense for your life. What we're going to do here is look at the possible motivations behind this behavior, especially when it's not as free as it seems. Psychoanalysis doesn't offer ready-made answers. It asks questions. It makes you look at yourself more honestly. It shows you that you might not be as much in control of your choices as you think, and that's not a criticism. It's just how the human mind works. For Freud, no behavior is random. Everything we do, or stop doing, has a psychic reason. And often that reason is hidden in the unconscious. You might believe you don't post because you don't see the point, but deep down, you might be avoiding something that hurts. Let's think about it this way. Imagine you grew up in an environment where drawing attention was dangerous. Maybe you were criticized when you stood out, or compared, or ridiculed. Your unconscious learned a lesson, and that lesson stays there, operating silently, even years later. So now, when you pick up your phone to post a photo, that internal alarm goes off. You don't even notice it consciously. You just feel discomfort, laziness, a never mind. And you believe it's a rational choice. But if it were really just that, you wouldn't feel anything. Freud called this a psychic conflict. It's when two opposing forces clash inside you. On one side, there's the desire to be seen, to exist for others, to receive attention. This is a fundamental human desire. We're social beings. We need recognition. On the other side, there's the fear that this visibility will cost too much. The fear of being judged, rejected, humiliated, exposed. And here's the thing. This conflict doesn't happen in the field of rational thought. It happens down there, where you don't have control, in the unconscious. That's why when someone asks you, why don't you post? You can't explain it properly. The real reason is in a place you can't access directly. It's buried under layers of defenses, rationalizations, justifications. Freud said that we build an idea of who we are. He called this the ego. And the ego needs two things to function. It needs to feel valuable and it needs to be recognized by others. Think of the ego as the internal manager of your psyche. It tries to balance your desires, your fears, and society's demands. But the ego is fragile. It's built from pieces. Pieces of how your parents saw you, how your peers treated you, how you were praised or criticized. And it constantly needs validation. It needs proof that you're worthy, that you matter, that you exist. Now look at the issue. Social media is a giant stage where everyone displays their edited version of themselves. and this directly affects everyone's narcissism. Narcissism, in psychoanalysis, isn't about being conceited. It's the way you relate to your own image. It's the love you feel for yourself. Everyone has it. Everyone needs it. But this love is fragile. It depends on others' gaze to sustain itself. You need to see yourself reflected in someone else's eyes to know that you exist. And that's where the danger lies. Because if you post a photo and no one likes it, what does that mean? For someone who already has a complicated relationship with their own image, this isn't just uncomfortable, it's unbearable. Freud spoke of the ideal ego and the ego ideal. The ideal ego is that fantasy of perfection you've carried since childhood. It's the image of who you should be, perfect, complete, without flaws. The ego ideal is the model you try to follow, based on what others expect of you. Social media throws these two concepts into a blender. When you scroll through your feed, you're constantly seeing images of people who seem to have achieved the ideal. So when you take a photo of yourself, it never seems enough, because it doesn't match the ideal image you've built. And posting that photo would be like admitting to the world, this is what I am. And that hurts. The unconscious is clever. It doesn't let you feel this pain directly. It creates exits. Freud called these defense mechanisms. They're automatic psychological strategies your mind uses to protect you from anxiety. And when we talk about not posting photos, several of these mechanisms come into play. Rationalization is the first. You transform pain into logic. I don't post because I think it's superficial. I prefer to live in the moment without worrying about likes. And this might actually be true. But sometimes it's just a way of not facing the fear beneath. Reaction formation is when you do the opposite of what you desire. Deep down, you want it to post, want it to be seen. But since this desire scares you, you go to the opposite extreme. I hate social media. People who post are shallow. You attack precisely what attracts you. Isolation of affect is when you disconnect from the emotional impact. You simply detach from this whole game. You don't post, don't comment, don't interact. You stay out. If you don't participate, you can't be rejected. It's a safe strategy, but it's also a lonely one. Denial also appears. You deny that this affects you. I don't care whether people see me or not. But then you see someone with thousands of likes and something stings. Small, quick, but it stings. Projection is when you place onto others what belongs to you. People who post are needy. You project onto others' behavior what you don't want to see in yourself. The desire to be noticed, the need for approval. These mechanisms aren't defects. They exist to protect you. The problem is when they start to limit you. When you stop doing something you'd actually like to do. Not by free choice, but by unconscious fear. Now imagine living like this all the time. You want and you don't want. You desire and you pull back. You feel the urge to show yourself, but you freeze when it's time. This psychic tug-of-war doesn't go away. It stays there, consuming energy. You might not notice it consciously, but every time someone takes a group photo and says, I'm going to post this, okay? You feel a tightness. Every time someone tags you in a post, you tense up. You ask them to remove it, because that stirs something you'd prefer not to stir. Freud said that living in conflict is exhausting, because you spend energy holding back things that want to surface, and the more you hold back, the more weight you carry. You're fighting against yourself, and that's the most draining fight there is. Sometimes, this exhaustion shows up as irritation. You get annoyed when someone insists you should post. Why do you care so much? But underneath your irritation, there's discomfort at having your defense exposed. There's also a subtle sadness that can accompany this pattern, a feeling of being on the sidelines, watching life happen to others. You see people sharing moments, connecting, being seen, and part of you wants that too, but another part immediately shuts down that desire. And you stay where you are, safe but separate, protected but invisible. At the core, what's at stake here isn't the photo. It's the fear of not being accepted, of being judged, of showing who you are and hearing, it's not enough. This is one of the most primal human fears. Freud spoke of anxiety as a signal from the unconscious. It's that nameless feeling that appears when you're near something threatening. And for many people, posting a photo is exactly that, a threat. Because you're putting yourself at the disposal of others' gaze, and others' gaze can be cruel. Many people carry an old wound. Maybe they were ridiculed in childhood. Maybe they were constantly compared to a sibling. Maybe they tried to get attention once and were shut down. And in that moment, they learned being seen is dangerous. There's also the fear of abandonment. If I show myself as I really am, people will leave. So not posting becomes a way of never fully showing up. Because if you never fully show up, you can never be fully rejected. And there's the fear of insignificance. What if I post and nobody cares? This fear might be worse than negative judgment, because indifference suggests you don't matter at all. The central question isn't, should I post photos? The question is, who's in control of that decision? If you don't post because you genuinely don't feel the need, because you already feel seen in other ways, great, you're in control. But if you don't post because you're afraid, because you freeze up, because you feel like you can't, then who's in control is the fear, and that's not freedom. Freud believed that psychic freedom comes from self-knowledge. When you understand where your behavior comes from, you can truly choose. But without that understanding, you're not choosing, you're just reacting. The problem is never the behavior itself. The problem is when you live imprisoned by it and don't even realize it, when your identity becomes built around avoiding and you confuse that avoidance with wisdom. If you've recognized yourself in this video, here are some suggestions. Ask yourself, what do I feel when I think about posting a photo? Don't rationalize, just feel. What's the sensation in your body? Sometimes just acknowledging the feeling is revelatory. Notice if you criticize people who post. If you find yourself judging, that's probably projection. You might be condemning in others a desire you're repressing in yourself. Take a photo and don't post it. Just look at it. See what comes up. Do you judge yourself? Notice the critical voice. Whose voice is it really? Experiment with posting something small. Try something low stakes, a landscape, an object. Notice what you feel before and after. Right. What do I think people will think of me if I show myself? Put it on paper. Often, when we externalize these fears, we realize they're not based on much evidence. Ask yourself, did I really choose this, or am I just avoiding? There's a difference between choosing not to post and running away from posting. One is freedom. The other is prison. Notice if you feel invisible. If not posting makes you feel like you don't exist to others, that's important information. Needing to be seen isn't weakness. It's human. Consider talking about this with someone you trust. Sometimes hearing yourself say things out loud brings clarity. Remember, the goal isn't to become someone who posts all the time. The goal is to understand yourself better, to know what's driving you, to distinguish between genuine preference and unconscious avoidance. Self-knowledge is a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself. Be curious rather than judgmental. You develop these patterns for good reasons. Honor that. And then gently ask if they're still serving you.